All right. I know. I spent hours cutting tomatoes. I want you guys to know that that lunch was sponsored in part by I also want you to know that Bracken's mission feed the homeless healthy meals, and they were kind enough, we like each other, so they were kind enough to bring the food, and a few amazing people that are presiding judge over the veteran treatment courts and the collaborative courts, and you will be hearing him speak soon, Your Honor. Mr. Frank Tallarico, Executive Director. Mr. Tallarico, please stand. As well as the very distinguished Dr. Kathy Copeland of Orange County Goodwill. Orange County Goodwill Veteran Services is one of the title sponsors of this event. So it's, without their support, we couldn't have their event. So much to Goodwill. Thank you, Mr. Broughton. And now I'd like to introduce the moderator of the next panel. We have the legal panel, and y'all know I'm an attorney, so this is exciting for me. We're going to have a couple of my favorite judges and one of two of my favorite criminal law attorneys. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out my other favorite criminal law attorney, who's Kelly Knight. Are you in the room? Please stand. Kelly Knight, along with Kevin Snyder, who's on the panel, are two criminal law attorneys, take a lot of cases through veterans, serve veterans. So we appreciate it. Moderator, Mr. Robert McDonald, not the one on the East Coast, the West Coast McDonald, is a two-time Navy. He is the president of the Orange County Black. He is the chairman of Veterans Legal Institute Board, which is why I have to be super nice to him. And he's many other things, but I can tell you that of all the veteran advocates in our great county, he is truly one who and has done so much without any. So it is my honor to introduce Mr. Bobby.
I have the, welcome everyone. I have the honor and privilege of introducing our panel. But, when Antoinette called me and said, hey Bobby, I want you to consider please doing the moderating for the judges, and I'm going, is that a hint? Have I done something wrong? But, well, at least, guess what? At least I'm going to be prepared and I'll know who I'm standing in front of, right? Okay. The first person is Judge Joe Perez, who became a Superior Court judge in December 2010. He currently oversees 10 different collaborative courts, Combat Veterans Court, 5 mental health, drug court, and the Homeless Outreach Court. His assignment included his jury trials calendar and felony pretrial and prelim calendar. Graduating from UCLA in 1986, he attended Southwestern University School of Law, where he received a doctorate of jurisprudence. Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Joe Perez.
Can you hear me? Thank you. Believe it or not, in Orange County, we're credit for it as my predecessor, Judge Winley Lindley, who was a juggernaut, and she literally built a courtroom from the ground up. And she is the reason why we have our Combat Veterans Court. We were the #2 Combat Veterans Court in the United States, right after Buffalo. We are one of 4 mentor courts in the United States. What does that mean? What that means is we have folks from all over the country and the world coming to our location to see away as Israel, Indonesia, Japan, just about every. What do we take? Well, just to kind of give you an idea of who we take and what now, we have 27 people that are in the program. We've had a recidivism rate of 10.5. Now let me explain. That isn't a number. Things that we will not take is something involving a harm, something in some case involving sex, or some case that involves some sort of gang issues. And the reason why they come to my court is because at the end of their going through this long process, and it is just that, it's a minimum of 18 months long, they're to it, but when they get through that program, they get their cases dismissed. So that's the reason for them to come into the court. The partner agencies that we have that are just incredible, that sit at the table every single time we have our mentor court at Community Court Building #1, at the old Buffins building on Main Street. If you're ever interested, please come and watch. The parties that are the District Attorney's Office, the Public Defender's Office, the Probation Department of Orange County. We have 2 judicial outreach social workers from the VA, and we have 1 psychiatrist from the VA. I want to say this about the Veterans Administration. This is just my personal thought. They have been nothing but extraordinary in assisting us in making our court go. Others have been extraordinary to understand what's going on. And what Dave does, you want to tell him what you do? Tell him what you do. Yeah, I know you didn't want to speak, but you're going to speak. Just tell him who you are and what you do. He's also part of our team. And so he's a group that gets together and that meets before each court. Now, at the people that we're in is this. If you are charged with a crime and you've been in the military, we will certainly look at you. Let me give you a couple examples. We have some Coast Guardsmen, what they've done in the military and what led to an incredible program. And I wanted to mention this. The real stars of the court, it's not this team. We have volunteer mentors. And volunteer mentors are folks that have been in the, we as a court really are there to do one thing, and hope. Hope that we appreciate what you've done for this country and that they have an ear to someone to listen to. They are extraordinary people that volunteer their times to reach out to these veterans who have some of the deployments into the combat zone. And what they do is just an ear, just to listen and to be there for them. And we need more. And I was just talking to Judge Hurwitz, and he said, you know, you're going to mention about your mentors. And I am. And if any of you are interested in being a mentor, see me, because them. And they are a group of just extraordinary people. I want to mention that subject, but I want to mention a little bit about Vietnam era veteran. I just spent the weekend with my, who I call my crusty colonel father-in-law, who he still calls me kid. I'm a judge. Hey, kid. When he came home from Vietnam, he was that was emblazoned with a Bronze Star with a Combat V. And I told him, and I'm going to tell you guys of that era, what you went through and what you've done since then has created courts like mine. And I told him, you know, when I left that I was going to be speaking today. I wanted to mention something about the Vietnam era vets. And he said, I don't know if you need to do that. I said, no, I'm going, because what you've done and the folks that are in here that have been, were in war and that I'm home to, it's a discussion. What you've done with it is extraordinary. So if you've been in, if you are the Vietnam era veteran, I'd just like you to stand up and be recognized. Would you please? Thank you all. You're Americans, absolutely extraordinary. So please come by and take a look. I want to recognize here that I want them to speak. They don't have to, and I told them they didn't have to. I've got someone that's actually in my court that's here. And I came and I told him, I said, if you don't speak, that's fine. If you speak, you blow it, you're going to jail. You know, just no promises, but do you want to say a couple of words about, and then once we hear from him, there's someone else that's also extraordinary that's here. I want to, maybe they can give you a little bit more insight than I can from the bench. People.
It's not a waste of your time. I really encourage you to come down because it saved my life. I was looking at, and it offered me not only the opportunity to prison, but also the health care that I needed that I had never sought. And you may hear people say, yeah, it's not easy. You give up a lot. I have a 10 o'clock curfew. I'm 55 years old and I have a 10 o'clock curfew. I'm going Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then I'm walking through the halls, and I run into one of our graduates. He was a cavalry scout in the Army, and is a sergeant, and his name is Tom Woods. Now, I promise I didn't put these people in. I didn't plan them, I promise. This is very typical of what we have, and I just
Graduated from Combat Veterans Court almost a year ago, not quite. I kind of hung out there a little longer than most, about 3 years. I made a few mistakes along the way in the 18-month program. I decided to drink again, which caused me some problems with UA and all those other sort of wonderful structure. I got out of the military in January 2000. Out of the military structure, we're talking like when you first get there, 2 self-help meetings per week, substance abuse meetings at the VA per week, curfew, so it's nonstop, and also got a part-time job. To tell you today, I now work for the Brain Treatment Center in Newport Beach, California, and another location in Mission. I've been working with them for 2 years, and I just got back from 6 weeks on the road in Washington, D.C., opening a clinic for us, and me of all congressmen about veterans issues and what we need. Versus if you had seen me 3.5 years ago, I was like a homeless. Works, gives you structure, gives you ideas and support on places you can go, what you can do for education, what you can do for. So, if you guys have any questions for me about what the court system looks like, feel free to find me afterwards. Thanks.
thank you, Tom. The Senate Veterans Affairs Committee in Sacramento, and I told the chairman that these folks and that my predecessor, what an extraordinary lady. She literally was told that happens. I don't even know how to explain it. And giving these warriors hope is what we do. And I really want to thank both of you guys for doing it and for coming forward and taking the courage to do so. Thank you, guys. Group. Everyone, and frankly, the honor rests with me to be in front of these warriors who literally, with the tip of the spear, pulling triggers on our behalf. I'm the fortunate one, and it's an honor for me to sit in front of these. Thank you all very much.
Perez. Let's give him another round of applause. One more time. Law in 2015, a dual estate planning and criminal defense practice. Snyder Law is of Kevin's drive to use his education and experience with credo of being a man for others, empowering individuals to succeed today and helping them properly plan a secure future for those they love. His experience intimately working began his career at Solomon, Saltzman, and Jameson in Los Angeles. While Kevin earned a master's law from the California Western School of Law, his Juris Doctorate from the University of Richmond School of Law, graduating, and his bachelor's cum laude. While at the University of Richmond School of Law School, Los Angeles.
Much. It's a pleasure to be here among the group, and I'm not talking about the judges to my right. I'm talking about all of you.
Gee, thanks a lot.
And the funny thing is I have to appear in front of him next Monday.
He gets no benefit, trust me.
It is an honor to be here, and I'm going to echo the sentiments that Judge Perez said. Public Defender's Office, and a small part of that I was in Lindley, and I had an opportunity to see on a weekly and day-to-day basis what veterans were going through in their struggles, not just in the criminal justice system, but in their daily lives as they returned back from duty. And now in private practice, and certainly when I was in the Public Defender's Office, it was an honor to represent a veteran. And the reason why I like doing it because is be in court with you to try to do the same thing, but to have you come out with the opportunities that you have for providing me with the freedom, my family the freedom. Continue to do this job to help the best I can, because you have helped me. Is not just to laud you with platitudes that you deserve, absolutely, but to let you know a little bit about some of the other find themselves in the crosshairs of the criminal justice system. And when I come across a veteran or answers me late at night on the phone and wakes me up at midnight and says, "Kevin, I need individual has an opportunity to get an expungement at the end of their sentence with a little bit more decisiveness than normal. Normally in criminal law, you can file at the end of your probation period for an expungement, which is 12 under 1170.9. If the judge grants you this sentence because you're a veteran and you have this nexus of your service to the crime, and you do complete your terms of probation successfully, you achieve that expungement at the end of your sentence. You can achieve an early termination of your probation, things that are more readily available to veterans than anybody else. Anybody else has to have the uncertainty of applying, maybe, maybe not, but here the veterans are on track with the sentencing judge to achieve certain benchmarks to then ultimately get off of probation early. And I'm going to talk a lot. Prop 47, and what I'll say quickly about Prop 47 is that it changed a landscape of AB 109 did in 2011. It's the next biggest change in sentence, Prop 47. It's a 3-year sunset provision. So it was passed in November of 2014. Come November of 2017, I've personally seen individuals who have been able to get jobs now because their felonies are now misdemeanors that put them on parole are now misdemeanors. So that's another way that we as the legal community can make a difference for veterans that don't have the opportunity to go to Veterans Court or take advantage of military diversion under 1001.80 is just get a
9. In 2010, Judge Hurwitz created the first family law veterans domestic violence diversion program in the United States and obtained the approval of the program from the Veterans Administration in Washington. Opportunity to deal with the effects of post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injuries that lead to domestic violence issues. Judge Hurwitz serves as a supervising Superior Court. Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Lon Hurwitz.
Let me say initially that what you've heard about from two greats is a dynamic program. Judge, those of us who are privileged enough to sit on the Orange County bench are terribly proud of. But let me say, it is a criminal program. In order for back in 2008, that we were going to see the vets and family law before they ever got to the criminal courts, hopefully. For the most part, we began to see that from our returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. And the way that they were first coming to us was in our domestic violence courts. In California, there are two different types of domestic violence schemes. There is the criminal domestic violence laws, and there are the family law domestic violence laws, which are not criminal. They are basically civil restraining order schemes. And what we were seeing was the returning veteran service member that would come home to the significant other and have the post-traumatic stress or injury overlay, and now someone who has been in charge, taught to be in charge, taught to pursue the objective, accomplish the mission, has now come home and is not in charge because the service, the significant other was in charge.
Just for a second, we've got a couple of presentations we need to make, and then we're going to have a 10-minute break. But a presentation.
It's not for, it's always good to talk to you. Have you up next to me.
Good afternoon, everyone. As did state, there are individuals out there who are funding me once. So it isn't a letter. This afternoon, we're here to recognize individuals for their excellent work with our veterans. And Alyssa was going to make the presentation.
Thank you, Robert. Hello, everyone. First and foremost, we would like to thank each and every one of you for being here today. It definitely means a lot to show your support for our nation's veterans. We would also like to thank the Legal Institute, Rear Area Support Foundation, and Foundation for having us here today. So on behalf of Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez, we are so honored to present these and Summit. We also are presenting a statement for the congressional record in which the Congresswoman will be presenting on the House floor in Capitol Hill later on this month. So thank you for your support.
Also, Ben Rainiac from Congresswoman Mimi Walters' office. Ben?
Like Bobby said, my name is Ben. I'm with Minority here with all the Marine Corps. So when I sit down and talk to the Marine Corps, they always give me a hard time about being in the Air Force. But in a conversation, they always say, you know, you guys were Air Force, but you always think it was worth it in and of itself. So I just want to thank Antoinette and the Veterans Legal Institute personally, on behalf of the Congresswoman, for just all of the work that is done on behalf of the veterans community. It definitely does not go unnoticed. Unfortunately, the Congresswoman wasn't able to be here at Veterans Legal Institute for last because you guys have quite the posse. So is somebody here for Richard Nixon or no? And then I apologize, we didn't, and unfortunately she's going to be here today, but thankfulness and gratitude for all the work that you guys do on a daily basis for the veteran population. So we thank you again.
Is there a representative here from Senator?
Listening to our judges and panelists on this one, I have a question for you. I grew up in a house with a veteran who had drastic PTSD. And are they ever thinking about expanding this program to handle the kids of some of these veterans' homes that they're coming from, where the situations are so drastic that it's kind of taking effect to the children, and you're seeing some of the children coming through the system?
Saying that you save the world. I would imagine that our graduate would say that not only did we help him, but we helped his family. Because we don't just treat necessarily the person that's before us. It goes family-wide. And I don't know, is that a fair statement? So our graduations are extraordinary because we bring up folks and their families. Do you know how many mothers have, because they're right in front of me, they come up and do the graduations, have turned to me, and fathers and sisters and
Okay, everybody, 2 minutes. 2 minutes if you can get back to your seats or work your way back to your seats. You can ask all the questions you need after the event. So everybody, if you could work your way back to your seats, we can keep the program moving. Okay, if all of our attendees could please be seated. All of our attendees, please. Again, we want to have an amazing here, and she's going to one of our speakers, and then they're going to go ahead and get going. This is all those that want to know more about California Veterans Benefits. This is a very, very difficult, some amazing content. Okay.
A big deal to the county of. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Mr. Larry Broughton. Mr. Broughton, a part veteran. On top of that, he is the owner and chair and many other things. But most importantly, what's about Mr. Broughton, while throughout his busy national schedule speaking and presenting at different places across country.
Is that all about? Jeez Louise. Hi guys, I'm going to adjust this a little bit because I'm kind of a mutant. So it's good to see some familiar faces here. Antoinette called me a couple days ago and said, hey, can you come and tell your story for 7 minutes? The panel. So panelists, thanks for being here. We're going to introduce you folks here in just a couple minutes, but it's always fun to come and see some of these vets, particularly, you know, what just happened here is classic among the veterans. To get people to come to show up to these things blows my mind. But it does remind me, it's a little bit similar to what my life has been. I have been all over the board. Some would call me a schizophrenic entrepreneur, and I think they would be right. We've got a couple of business partners here and other ventures I've been in. So it's interesting who shows up. You've had this legal because I will probably be visiting some of those folks. Past predicts my future. It's really strange to be here in the Richard Nixon Library in particular. Some of you folks are about my age. Richard Nixon, the first president. I've met a couple of SF vets here. Right on, brother. Any other Special Forces vets here? Well, anyway, right on. Glad that we're all here. And so I barely graduated. I'm dyslexic, but I didn't know that at the time. I got through, and I moved out of my parents' house with my twin brother when I was 17. We were still in high school. You know, it was one of those, listen, there are people who have much harder lives than I did. It was kind of a messy existence. You know, on the outside, it looked like Maryberry RFD, but you know, you pull the curtain back, and there's a lot of nefarious stuff going on. And so we tried to escape through martial arts, and so I was teaching martial arts after I got out of high school, and I was flipping burgers at McDonald's, and before I saw a couple people chuckle on that. Listen, I believe that there is dignity in all work, and so that's where I started. You know, based in San Francisco. All right, so you might know this property then. It's at the corner of Eddy and Larkin. We used to call it the gateway to the Tenderloin. All right, and my job is among the drug dealers and the prostitutes. My co-worker, in other words. Literally. The guy who worked the free shift was on parole for being a pimp. Who was part of his harem, was executive housekeeper. The guy who worked the 3 to 11 shift, I came in one night and he was OD'd. He was the local heroin. After being there for a few months, an investment group came in to buy this place and to turn it around and turn it into a rock and roll hotel. It became a precursor, now known as the boutique. Showed up when they were trying to, the buyer was trying to buy this hotel. They showed up like it mattered. I mean, there's a great lesson in life. Show up in life like it matters, because once they closed escrow, guess what happened? The buyer fired everybody, kept me on board because they trusted me. They didn't even really know me, but the way I showed up like it mattered immediately built trust with them. Yourselves, how are you showing up in life? Are people, you know, just trusting you with $1 million assets, or with their lives, or with their emotions, because they can trust you, right? So, and speak in front of a group of about 300 was trust at their annual integrity breakfast. Let that sink in for a second. I'm in Washington. But I was talking about trust and just how important it is. Trust lowered, activity went down, cost went up, frustrations went up. here does a State of the American Workforce survey, and what they have found over and over again is engaged or actively a company from the inside. These are people who self-admit this year in and year out, right? Religious leaders, educational institutions, a decline in trust except for one. You know what it is? Veterans have laid the groundwork, have made it easier for me to go out and do the things that I'm doing. Because I can tell you this, when I got out of the military, I moved, I spent 9 years, I was not welcomed, with open arms. And I turned my back on my veteran status, and it wasn't until several years later when I started connecting the dots on MSNBC and CNN and those kind of things where people say, well, where do you get this stuff? When you talk about leadership, when you go into organizations to speak about team building, where's this stuff come from? And it all pointed back to my days in the military. For those of you who are nervous or tentative about this, I'm going to encourage you, there's a way to do it without sounding boastful or prideful or braggadocious. Believe me, it goes against everything in my being. But what I realize is if we can make a dent in society by showing that we can get out there and change the course of I'm going to ask you this stuff, and I'm going to introduce the panel. Do people on your team, are people in your constituency, do they trust you? And if they don't, why? A lot of leaders who are lost, you did amazing things, and that's good enough for me. So thank you, brothers and sisters. By the way, before I introduce people, what I find amazing in this county, and as Antoinette said, I travel all over the country, and amazing things like the veteran Delta is doing on a shoestring budget and making huge impacts. If you are not helping these folks, I'm begging you, pull out your wallet, donate your time, because all right, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to introduce our panel, then we've got a few questions, and I'll just there and maybe have one of you folks question. And the whole idea here is meant for it to be a conversation, so that not me, okay? So we've got Dr. Vito Imbesiani, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, sir. He was sworn in as the Secretary of California. He was Director of Government Relations at the Southern California Urologic Surgeon since 1987. He served as State Surgeon for the California Army National Guard from 2006 to 2004, President-elect of the Los Angeles County Medical Association, and a member of the California Medicine degree from the University of Vermont College of Medicine, and Doctor of Philosophy and Master's from Cornell University. Thank you, sir. Has been Deputy Attorney General at the California Department of Justice since 2000. Prior to joining DOJ, he was a sole practitioner in Irvine, attorney at the Duffy Law Firm in Newport Beach, an associate attorney and partner at Hess Burden and Associates, Hess Burden and Irby in Newport Beach, and associate Martin Wilson, Garrett and Jensen in Santa Ana. During his career, he had various leadership positions in local and statewide legal organizations, including the State Bar of California, State Bar, doctorate degree, United States Air Force. Thank you, sir, for being here. So, by the way, and then Liz held that in November. I am just telling you, women are knocking it out of the park nowadays. For those who don't know, can I just interject 1 second? I am sorry I have to do this. Men, we are on IQ tests in this country than in men. They're getting more both undergraduate and postgraduate degrees than men. They're starting more business, performing their competitors on their boards. Women are leadership gap, and so deployed in of Operations Northern Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. After separating from the Navy, Lindsay returned to Sacramento and worked with veterans at American River College and at Sacramento State. Lindsay has a BA in History from Sacramento State and an MA from Drexel University. Thank you, ma'am, for being here. Appreciate you. Governor Brown to serve as Deputy Secretary of the Army from 1989 to 1992 as a tactical specialist, and was deployed to Iraq in support of Operation Shield, Desert Storm, and Desert Calm. After graduating from San Francisco State University, he began as Community Education Director for the Institute of Veteran Policy, where he worked to expand their combat to community partners who interact directly with recently returned veterans. The C2C program included training for law enforcement, human resources professionals. Thank you, sir, and our entire panel for being. All right, so we have a few questions here, and what I'd like to do is kind of pose this to one, and then we can kind of piggyback off of this, if it's okay. So let's direct this first question to our panelists, who's kind of served with Calvet the longest. Lindsay. Can you please describe a little bit about CalVet and what it is that you do, and what are the benefits and programs that CalVet might have?
Am I allowed to disobey you?
I'm sorry?
Am I allowed to disobey you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, you know you have that high IQ, so you run with it.
How so? I may have to rein you back in, but
I don't want to particular vulnerability that affects their children as well, and that's not a circumstance that we in California want to continue to see. So housing nationwide, and especially in California, needs to create more options for women veterans, and we are working on that.
in California.
Well, my role as
You probably won't get the mic back now. So yes, there's a lot of big issues. I think to follow up on what the Secretary spoke about earlier, though, I think it's important that we back up a little bit because as hard it is for his family to understand the structure of the state. I know many of these folks in this room that I work with very closely still don't understand exactly what the department does, and I think opportunities like this, it's vital to get that information out there. So Todd alluded to what the legal department does, and we have some understanding of what Rick and Lindsay do as well. My division is basically everything other than the 8 homes, and as Todd said, they are a large. When I was appointed, the governor asked, what is it that you want to do what is the biggest issues these days? And I came, when I got out of school, I started working for Swords to Plowshares in their legal department, and it was very comp and pen based, was very legal in my approach to veterans transition, you could say. And the first and foremost, access to health care and compensation and pension. Physical one. Effective use of the education benefits that are so generously provided these days. So those were the 2 things that really jumped out, and those are 2 of the things that I think are bigger. The 3 VA regional offices in the state were, the worst performing in the country, very frankly. Not San Diego so much, but LA and Oakland. It was nearly 600, 700 days to wait for initial claim years, 2.5 years in San Diego fair. So fortunately, with some support from the department, and sit down literally with these stacks of paper claims to the ceiling in some cases, and have staff go through them and start adjudicating those and pushing them through. And we're happy to announce for about 2 years of this program running, we've gone from 7,000 backlog claims down to under 7,000 now. So you figure that's about.
You see under your new leader, where's the department going?
yeah, there had been a gap in leadership at the highest levels. There were a number of deputy spots that needed to be filled, so our org chart filled out. But that's an internal matter. The veterans in California, the 1.86579 million that are not the elderly vets in our homes. We have eight homes. We're housing close in our care. They're not state like people in prisons or state hospitals. These are free. But they do take up an extraordinary amount of our resources. We need to stress in the future, and it's going to be hard for us. This is a driver's license, but you can't see it unless your eyesight is really good. It has the word veteran embossed on there. This way, I mean, there are a lot of benefits that come to veterans when they can identify, and unless you have your DD-214 tattooed to your posterior, you often have. So thank you very much for that. So why do we make you go there in order to go to the DMV? Because and if you think the departments or the VA is constantly telling us that's not happening. Our electronic systems don't talk to the feds that way yet. 30,000 Californian veterans have their licenses expire every month. So we're already up to well past 20,000 since Veterans Day last year of people who have signed up for this. So when you go into him, he captures all the data. And lo and behold, you may have children. You may have access to health benefits and housing and all kinds of other. You may need to file a claim and don't realize it. His office.
It provided me a lot of information. It basically told me, this environmental scan basically told me who's doing what where and how are they doing it, and making sure everybody knows each other as well. So once everybody throughout the state, we figured out where they are, what they're doing, how they do it, let people know who your neighbors are, and that's part of Eddie's job too, regionally doing that.
To a higher level where it's needed, but that's what we're still missing. We still need to be able to continue to be the leaders nationwide and push the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, congressional delegates, and inform them when they need to know, and the major veterans organizations that represent people nationally to issues that require policies, policy change at much more in-depth levels. And California is poised to do that, but in order to do that, we need your help, and we need to do this on a way that bubbles these types of things up to the correct levels. And I think we're going to get because I know we're also fired up about it. I think so many of you in the community are as well.
Can you give us these guys a round of applause first? Thank you so much.
State of California, and very thankful to Dr. Imbassiani and Mr. Deputy Secretary Boylan, Deputy Secretary Lindsay Sin, and thank you all. Safe travels to wherever you came from. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. That's ours.